And let's listen to what the president is saying here.
Good afternoon. Before I begin my remarks, I just want to say a few words about what happened yesterday in New York City. The American principle that no one is above the law was reaffirmed. Donald Trump was given every opportunity to defend himself. It was a state case, not a federal case, and it was heard by a jury of 12 citizens, 12 Americans, 12 people like you, like millions of Americans who served on juries. This jury is chosen the same way every jury in America is chosen. It was a process that Donald Trump's attorney was part of. The jury heard 5 weeks of evidence, 5 weeks. And after careful deliberation, the jury reached a unanimous verdict. They found Donald Trump guilty on all 34 felony counts. Now he'll be given the opportunity, as he should, to appeal that decision just like everyone else has that opportunity. That's how the American system of justice works. And it's reckless, it's dangerous, it's irresponsible for anyone to say this was rigged just because they don't like the verdict. Our justice system has endured for nearly 250 years. And it literally is the cornerstone of America, our justice system. The justice system should be respected, and we should never allow anyone to tear it down. It's as simple as that. That's America. That's who we are. And that's who we'll always be, God willing.
But let's talk now about what the president mentioned at the top. He commented on the verdict, the unanimous conviction of former President Trump.
Yeah, the president saying that, quote, the American principle that no one is above the law was reaffirmed yesterday with this decision. He emphasized that is how the U.S. system of justice works, and he went after the former president and some of his backers, saying that it is reckless to say that it is rigged. We want to get some perspective now from Kristen Holmes, who's been following the Trump trial and the Trump campaign very closely. Kristen, what did you hear from President Biden in regards to this verdict of Donald Trump and the way that Trump has responded to it?
Well, look, this was a very different speech than what we heard from Donald Trump. I understand that this was not all about Donald Trump, but Biden remained on message, and he said the things that Democrats wanted him to say and that people expected him to say, which was that no one is above the law. And also, as you mentioned, and I think this part is very critical, that they found Donald Trump guilty on all 34 felony counts, and then saying it is reckless, dangerous, and irresponsible to say that the Trump trial was rigged. I mean, that is a core argument of the former president's. That's essentially all he said today in his speech that was rambling and a huge airing of grievances. Donald Trump wants to make this a political campaign issue. He wants to blame this on President Joe Biden and say that he is a political prisoner, quote unquote. That was an actual fundraising email that Donald Trump sent out last night. And Biden clearly separating himself from that, commenting strictly on the verdict. He also said at one point that he has the right to appeal like any other person. I'm sorry, again, we keep meeting here by the bus stop, guys. But the most important takeaway here is that this, to me, is that this is going to be a political issue moving forward. And both sides see that as such. Donald Trump spent a lot of time today. He could have talked about immigration. He could have talked about the economy, things that his team believes will help him win in November. Instead, he aired his grievances. And in fact, there's some concerns that he breached his gag order because he went after one of the lead witnesses, not by name, but very clearly attacking Michael Cohen and calling him a sleazebag. Joe Biden separating from this, saying he can make his appeal, that they should not, that calling this a rigged trial is reckless. And I think this is just the beginning of how we're going to see this play out in the political sphere ahead of November.
All right, Kristen, thank you. And let's bring in Priscilla Alvarez. Priscilla, let's play a little bit of what we just heard from President Biden as he commented at the top of these remarks in the Middle East about the verdict of former President Trump. Here it is.
They found Donald Trump guilty on all 34 felony counts. Now he'll be given the opportunity, as he should, to appeal that decision just like everyone else has that opportunity. That's how the American system of justice works. And it's reckless, it's dangerous, It's irresponsible for anyone to say this was rigged just because they don't like the verdict.
Priscilla, how has the president and the White House been weighing how to respond appropriately to this conviction?
Well, and this was notable because it is the first time that we heard directly from the president about this verdict. I think it is important here to note exactly how he laid this out. He was quite technical in his language in describing how the justice system works and how this verdict was reached, noting, for example, the jurors, and also going on to say, quote, no one is above the law. That principle has been reaffirmed. And it's important to note that because that has been the fine line that this White House has had to walk over the course of this trial. They have been relatively quiet because they didn't want to give any perception that this had anything to do with the federal government or pushing along the claims that the president was involved. In fact, the president noted this was a state case, not a federal case. And so the campaign has really been leading the charge over the last few hours in sort of attacking what has happened and saying that the former president in his remarks earlier today is, quote, unhinged. But that's been the campaign leading the charge. The White House has had a much more difficult time and has had to walk this fine line. And that's what you saw the president doing today, sort of taking a somber tone, talking about the American justice system and noting, again, that it is, quote, irresponsible to say it's rigged. And that, again, has been the challenge for the administration. It could very much still be the challenge moving on in the next few weeks. And that is where we sort of see the campaign take the baton, where they can be more forceful, more aggressive in their language and talking about this trial. We know there has been talk about whether or not they should be calling him being the former president, a criminal. We've seen the statements be a little more forceful, but at the end of the day, what the campaign's message is going to be is that this needs to be decided at the ballot box, not in the courtroom. So again, the president, notable moment. He waited on this for the first time. This has been a historic moment, but he really took the moment here to be very technical in his description of what occurred yesterday.
Priscilla Alvarez from the White House, thank you so much. Let's get some perspective now from Judge George Grasso. Judge, thanks so much for being with us. Your reaction to what we just heard from President Biden regarding the American justice system?
Reckless, dangerous, and irresponsible. The attacks by now convicted felon Donald Trump and his minions. Let's be clear here. This is on our jury system, this is on our judicial system, and this is on the rule of law. I don't think President Biden could have said it more clearly, more succinctly, or more directly. This is a very dangerous moment in our history, what's happening right now.